Amid the screech of machinery and the acrid stench of burning oil, Everly Hart, the engineer in coveralls, received the email that would change her fate, a mysterious appointment with the Vega Industries empire. When family secrets are exposed and honor walks hand in hand with ambition, can she still save her future? The twinkling lights cast a shimmering glow on the grease-stained coveralls, highlighting every crease and smudge on Everly Hart, who had spent 15 years etching love letters into metal. The roar of a BMW engine surged like the breath of a steel beast, blending with the clank of wrenches and ratchets to compose a haughty industrial symphony that filled Hart Garage. Wisps of exhaust smoke curled upward, tracing wavy patterns like the whispers of machinery crying for help, pulling Everly into an endless race against time. A streak of oil lingered on the back of her hand as she wiped it hastily, but her eyes were already fixed on the garage entrance when Blaze Mercer's urgent voice crackled through the radio. "Everly, check the Mercedes engine, now! Client's deadline is here!" The call was like a fire alarm, sparking her instincts, her heart pounding as each step glided across the concrete floor. Light yet resolute, darting like an arrow toward the white Mercedes parked in the dim corner. On the diagnostic panel, red error codes blinked like emergency signals, demanding Everly pinpoint the issue before the client could even ask. Amid the flickering lights, she leaned in, listening to the warning sounds, the faint ticking from the camshaft, the growl of the turbine lurking like a sign of dwindling oil pressure. With practiced precision, Everly removed the throttle valve, meticulously scrubbing away thick carbon buildup with a small steel brush, then inspected the valve connectors, carefully tightening each bolt to the exact torque. Her hands turned the wrench, the tool ringing with a high-pitched note, resonating like a victorious chord amidst the sea of black oil, every sound seeming to follow the rhythm of her breath. Beads of sweat slid down Everly's cheeks, dripping onto the metal shield, carrying memories of countless late nights sprawled under chassis, buried in mechanics' manuals and the pungent scent of grease, vowing never to let any hunk of steel defeat her. She recalled the skeptical looks from her parents, Sterling and Odessa Hart, when they first saw her covered in grime instead of beaming in an engineer's uniform. Yet it was that doubt in their eyes that ignited a fierce determination in Everly, transforming every oil stain, every screech of machinery into emblems of her passion and drive to conquer. As Everly closed the hood, the steel heart inside the Mercedes hummed a soft, steady purr, its even rhythm signaling renewed life. She leaned lightly against the car, taking a deep breath, listening to the engine's sigh merge with the wind whistling through the garage roof. In that fleeting moment of quiet, it felt as if all of Hart Garage paused to watch her, the mechanic and CEO who had turned grease and circuits into her own story. Finally, Everly's warm, steady voice came through the radio. "Done, boss." Blaze Mercer nodded, his eyes brimming with trust and admiration. That moment encapsulated not just 15 years of relentless dedication, but also affirmed that, though her hands were caked in grime, Everly Hart shone like a steel warrior with a blazing heart, ready to charge into the next challenge, where metal and humanity fused in an unending symphony. The fluorescent lights flickered coldly over the concrete floor of Hart Garage, where grease stains etched the surface like steel scars. Everly Hart emerged from beneath an old Chevrolet, her eyes glinting like twin beams cutting through the hazy oil smoke. The sharp clack of high heels echoed amidst the whine of drills and the hum of grinders, signaling an unexpected visitor. Long, slender legs, in gleaming stilettos, stepped forward. Tamsin Hart, Everly's sister, poised and imperious in a designer's suit. The air thickened abruptly, the machine's breath seeming to pause as Tamsin halted before Everly. Everly slid out from under the car, wiping her oil-smeared coveralls, her voice dry. "What do you want?" Tamsin didn't answer. Her lips pursed as she surveyed the grimy attire, then gestured sharply. "This isn't a place for dresses." Each mention of dresses stung Everly's pride, but she retorted with calm sarcasm. "Want your Porsche fixed properly? I'm all yours." The forced smile cracked as Tamsin raised an eyebrow. the tension taut like a plucked string. Tamsin lifted her sunglasses, her voice sharp as a blade. "You're not fit to show up at Zephyr Locke's wedding. It's a high society event. You'd ruin the family's image." The words sliced through the air, and Everly felt a rush of hot blood. She glanced at the oil stains on her coveralls, then met Tamsin's gaze with defiance. "Too bad this is all I've got. Why not bring the garage to the red carpet?" Her tone was both a challenge and a taunt, leaving Tamsin momentarily flustered. Tamsin pointed at the scattered tools on the rack. "Sterling and Odessa Hart need a flawless image for the event. My reputation can't afford you showing up covered in grease in front of VIPs. Her voice was stern, heavy with sacrifice and duty. Everly stood silent, catching a mix of resentment and anguish in her sister's eyes. Everly's heart pounded as she replied solemnly, "I'm your sister, Tamsin. Everything I do is for the family, for you." Her words, soft yet powerful, struck like an arrow to the heart. Tamsin faltered, her eyes softening for a fleeting moment, then tilted her head. "Our parents agreed. Don't show up, not even for a second." The air grew heavy, like a stone pressing on Everly's chest. The faint rumble of an engine from the corner of the garage served as a reminder that, in this world, only passion and skill carved true honor. In that quiet moment, Everly recalled her parents' warm laughter at the dinner table, little Tamsin raising her hand for help with math homework, and every second she dreamed of proving herself in a harsh world. Those memories fused into boundless strength in the heart of the mechanic. The tense silence broke as Everly bowed her head quietly before turning away. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Fine, you go ahead." Hart Garage resumed its usual rhythm, leaving only the bitter taste of unease and unyielding resolve. The grease on Everly's hands felt heavy, but her eyes burned with determination. Though rejected, she would tighten every bolt and write her own story. The cold fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow over the concrete floor of Hart Garage, where grease stains scarred the surface like a steel map of every piston's and bolt's arduous journey. Everly Hart emerged slowly from beneath a car, her eyes like tempered steel yet brimming with suppressed emotion. She froze as she stepped out of the shadows, meeting the proud gaze of her sister, Tamsin Hart, clad in a meticulously tailored designer suit, her metallic stilettos glinting like a ceremonial crown. The air between the sisters froze, the distant whine of drills and grinders echoing from the garage's corner like an unspoken command. Tamsin pointed sharply at Everly, her voice cutting through the air. "Our parents, Sterling and Odessa Hart, have decided. You're not to attend the wedding." The verdict landed like a slow-motion explosion, making Everly's every cell tremble, her heart gripped by an invisible vice. She swallowed the urge to cry, her mouth dry and bitter, her pulse racing. The fluorescent beams seemed to weigh on her shoulders, making Everly feel small in the face of that glittering world. The pressure wasn't just a ban from a party, it was a blow of prejudice crashing down on the dreams and pride she'd built through 15 years drenched in oil and rain. In that fleeting pause, Everly closed her eyes, letting memories flood back like undercurrents. Her father, Sterling Hart, at the breakfast table, his eyes beaming with pride as Everly reported optimized test line results. His gentle pat on her shoulder, like bestowing an invisible sword, instilled unshakable faith in her abilities. The warmth of her mother Odessa Hart's hand, guiding her through her first bolt tightening on a hood, softly murmuring, "Follow your passion. Don't let anyone snuff it out." The mingled scents of motor oil and her mother's baked goods wove a chaotic yet loving symphony in her memory. Late nights under the garage's lamplight, Everly scribbling sensor data, running fuel injection simulations and helping Tamsin with linear optimization homework. The times she lent her savings to cover Tamsin's rent, the quiet smiles when Tamsin succeeded, each moment etched into Everly's heart, forming the bedrock of their sisterhood. The air conditioner's hum roared like war drums, snapping Everly back to reality. She opened her eyes, scanning the garage, once a haven of warm machinery and golden light, now a battlefield of choices. Everly drew a deep breath, letting it fill her chest, striving to keep her voice steady. "I understand, Tamsin." Those 3 words, warm yet tinged with the bitterness of sacrifice, hung in the air. Everly bowed her head briefly, her trembling hand brushing her oil-soaked coveralls, feeling the grease on her skin like a badge of her struggles. She pictured the lavish wedding gown, the silver-haired guests applauding in awe, and wondered, could her passion for mechanics ever rival that glamorous glory? Her heart hummed a note of regret like a sad ballad fading into the night, but Everly, the steel warrior in a mechanic's guise, refused to crumble. A faint smirk curved her lips, her eyes sparkling with pride. It wasn't that she didn't want to attend, but that she chose loyalty to herself. She removed her hard hat, smoothing her messy ponytail, and spoke with resolve. "Then I won't go." Everly's voice was cold, yet unwavering, resonating among the tools and machines. It wasn't surrender, but a declaration of someone clinging to her core values. As Tamsin gave a slight nod, her eyes briefly softening without another word, the unspoken tension between ambition and family deepened. Hart Garage returned to its daily rhythm, leaving only the lonely hum of a starting engine and the sharp scent of oil. Everly turned back toward the warm light of the workshop, her eyes blazing with determination. Though rejected, she would keep tightening every bolt, commanding every piece of metal with unyielding passion and an insatiable drive. The warm, golden glow of Hart Garage faded as the clock ticked toward midnight, leaving only the gasping hum of the air compressor, like the final breaths of a steel creature. Everly Hart sat slumped at her grease-streaked workbench, her hand still cradling a wrench warm from tightening a hood. The laptop's blue light flickered across her cheekbones, like fireflies settling on the ground after a night rain. She strained her eyes, rereading a project report, awaiting approval, then dared to open her inbox, where opportunities and challenges often lurked beneath dry subject lines. Before she could scroll, an email's subject line hit like a cold stone. Urgent meeting request with MGN Bastions. The sender, Vega Industries. Everly's heart raced like an egg caught in a blast of hot air, startling and breathless. Why Vega Industries? She recalled rumors of Zephyr Locke, Tamsin Hart's fiancé, son of the powerful Thaddeus Locke, poised to inherit that industrial empire. Now they were summoning her, the grease-stained mechanic, as CEO of MGN Bastions. The irony cut like a blade, slicing through the divide between passion and prejudice while opening a tantalizing path. Everly clenched her fist, skimming the message. "Dear Ms. Hart, we urgently require your expertise in optimizing production processes. The situation is critical. Please arrange to meet tomorrow morning." The phrase critical struck like a high-pressure hose, jolting her senses. She leaned back, her loose hair spilling, thoughts spinning like a turbine. A quiet echo rang in her mind. Am I dreaming? But the screen displayed the meeting details with Thaddeus Locke, complete with an Outlook link. It was undeniable. As her trembling hands typed a confirmation, the keyboard's steady clack sounded like a whip urging her forward. Prepare for a turning point. Everly attached a technical report, adding a formal note. Please find a preliminary analysis summary attached. Regards, Everly Hart, CEO, MGN Bastions. Sent. Her name on the screen glowed like a neon sign in the silent night, radiant and commanding. She closed her eyes for a second, inhaling deeply, her breath stretching as if readying for takeoff. When Everly snapped her laptop shut, the garage fell so quiet she could hear the hinges click. Amid the fan's hum and the faint scent of oil, she let out a soft laugh, the laugh of a weary but unyielding warrior. Opportunities don't knock twice, and Vega Industries' invitation was a golden key engraved with her name, poised to unlock the cold iron gates of a world she once thought was a distant dream. Everly stepped into the dim light, wiping oil from her hand, and glanced at the garage keys, whispering to herself, "Tomorrow I'll enter the empire of steel, not in grimy coveralls, but with the grit and knowledge forged over years." Finally, Everly relaxed her shoulders, smiling to herself amid the scrap metal sea. Tonight, Hart Garage remained her sanctuary, the stage of her passion. But tomorrow's dawn would herald a new movement. When the quiet mechanic became an architect of industrial processes, her story no longer confined to the scent of oil, but stretching toward the cold glass towers of Vega Industries. The warm golden glow of Locke Industries headquarters shimmered like an ink-wash painting. Of glass and stainless steel, the building soaring amid the city like a corporate lighthouse. Everly Hart adjusted her hands on her fitted black blazer, feeling each stitch like a circuit pulsing with energy. Her polished leather shoes tapped the lobby floor. The heels echo a rhythmic anthem of resolve as she entered a space thick with the hum of artificial machinery and the mingled scents of coffee and paper. She approached the reception desk, where cold white light spilled evenly across gray marble, creating a stark clinical palette. The receptionist, in crisp uniform, smiled like a piano's resonant chord. "Good morning, Miss Hart. Thaddeus and Zephyr Locke await you in the boardroom on the 40th floor." The words were an invitation to a power arena, stilling Everly's pulse before the pivotal moment. The ascent to the 40th floor unfolded in a steel and glass elevator, rocketing her upward like a bullet through the void. The rhythmic hiss of compressed air and flickering LED lights reflected sharply on the glass, evoking a crystal gliding through clouds. Each floor number ticked by like a warrior's footsteps toward the battlefield, drawing Everly closer to her destined encounter. As the boardroom doors parted, Everly stepped into the surprised gazes of the Locke dynasty. Zephyr Locke, tall in a deep navy suit, stood beside the imposing Thaddeus Locke in charcoal gray. The room stretched like a warship's deck, its glossy oak table an anchor for the critical dialogue ahead. Everly set her briefcase down, the heavy silence freezing the moment, awaiting her spark of brilliance. Her voice rang steady and decisive, like war drums rallying a logical army into the fray. "I've audited the production line, and we're operating at just 60% of optimal capacity." On the screen, pie charts and curves materialized sharply, a rescue map where each number and color affirmed the expertise honed over 15 grease-stained years. She pressed on. Material flow moves like a shallow river, outdated tech sails like a rusted yacht, and reactive maintenance is like firefighting a blaze waiting to erupt. Everly proposed IoT-based automation, AI-driven predictive maintenance, and centralized data synchronization to optimize material flow. Her words carved solutions into stone, leaving the room breathless with silence. Thaddeus Locke's eyes flickered with surprise and admiration, like an art connoisseur beholding a novel masterpiece. "How can you be certain?" he asked, his voice deep as a tolling bell. Everly replied calmly, "I've implemented this with major automotive partners, boosting efficiency by 40% on average." Her name resonated like a badge of triumph, erasing old prejudices about her coveralls. Zephyr Locke raised an eyebrow, his gaze finding the final puzzle piece. "Cost will be an issue?" Everly smiled, her voice chiming like a closing bell. "Time is the real factor." They nodded in agreement, and as Everly's hand brushed her briefcase, the papers inside felt like golden tickets to imminent change. The boardroom doors closed behind her, and Everly stepped out, her leather shoes grazing the lobby floor like a summoning drum. Her eyes blazed with newfound confidence and authority, her access card emblazoned with her name and title, CEO of MGN Bastions, gleaming in her hand. From Hart Garage to Locke Industries, her story remained a steel symphony, resounding endlessly in the world of metal and humanity. The morning light streamed through the glass windows of Locke Industries' factory, weaving a silvery shimmer across the conveyor belts, gliding smoothly like a mirrored lake. Under Everly Hart's orchestration, the production line had awakened, transformed. Each gear and conveyor now harmonized in an industrial symphony where speed and precision danced together. The performance dashboard glowed with a 25% efficiency spike in the first week, green bars rising like sprouts bursting from soil, drawing a satisfied smile from Everly. The occasional hiss of the air compressor rang out like a trumpet, heralding victory, while ventilation fans blew cool air through the control room, infusing her chest with fresh energy. Everly paced between material mixing stations, her eyes scanning pressure gauges and flow meters like a conductor wielding a baton over a steel orchestra. Each tap on the touchscreen smoothed the graph's curves, signaling material flow more seamless than ever. Amid the miniature inferno of the hum, the factory floor, Everly's phone buzzed. It was Blaze Mercer, her steadfast companion through seasons of grease and grit. "Everly, I hear the plant's efficiency is skyrocketing. Well done. Have you sent the documents I need?" Blaze's voice blended encouragement with warmth, like a dish fresh from the grill, still fragrant with smoke. Everly wiped a bead of sweat from her brow and replied, lifting her gaze, "I've sent them. Check the contract tonight, okay? Next week we roll out phase 2. The phone's soft chime echoed as she swiped the screen, then turned back to the humming machinery. This was the fruit of integrating predictive automation and maintenance. IoT and AI no longer distant concepts but woven into every corner of the factory. Yet amid the triumphant roar of numbers and algorithms, a quieter thought crept into Everly's mind. The image of Tamsin Hart immersed in lavish wedding plans with Zephyr Locke. She pictured imported Dutch flowers and scented candles on banquet tables, sparkling like crystals in a fairy tale setting. The vision was both sweet and bitter, like sugar laced with a salty lemon tang on her lips. At noon, under the scorching sun, as Everly tested the automated drying system, her phone rang again. Tamsin's name flashed on the screen. She hesitated, ever cautious. "I overheard you and Zephyr discussing next week's plans. Are you working with Locke Industries?" Tamsin's voice was soft, tinged with anxiety and pride. Everly forced a faint smile, keeping her tone warm and steady. "I'm collaborating on their production project, but don't worry, it's all under control. Hasn't Zephyr mentioned it?" Tamsin paused, her voice dropping. "Zephyr's been distant lately. Do you know anything? I just don't want the wedding to become gossip fodder." Before Everly could reassure her, background noise cut in, and Tamsin hung up abruptly. Everly stared at the control panel, a chill grazing her spine. Something was stirring beneath the wedding's glossy surface. Zephyr Locke, known to her only through project emails, now seemed to cast a vague shadow over both sisters. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly, feeling the machine's rhythm. Like her own heartbeat. Each smoothly turning gear vouched for her credibility, but Tamsin's calls were subtle reminders. Passion and family duty didn't always align seamlessly. Everly gazed at the oil mixing stations, her small shoulders bearing the weight of both her career and fragile family ties. As the end of shift bell rang, Everly tidied the control desk. Before leaving, she glanced back at the gleaming conveyors, where bolts and components awaited her guiding hand. She smiled faintly, murmuring to herself, "A 25% efficiency gain, numbers speak. But the road ahead? I'll need to tread it stronger than ever." Under the afternoon sun painting the tin roof red, Everly strode out of the factory gate with steady steps. The dried grease on her blazer shone like a badge of honor, and the daylight's glow crowned her shoulders like an invisible medal. The first week was a triumph, but the next journey, balancing her mechanical passion with family pressures, was the true challenge Everly Hart was poised to conquer. The crisp morning sun pierced the towering glass windows of Locke Industries, but it couldn't dispel the brewing media storm. At noon, Everly Hart's phone lit up with a Forbes headline, "Millionaire Mechanic, Everly Hart Revolutionizes Industry from a Small Garage." Like a fireball crashing into still water, the article erupted across social media, unleashing a torrent of news. Notifications flooded in, investors calling, colleagues emailing, making Everly's heart race like an over-tightened piston. Before she could process it, a message from Thaddeus Locke, head of Vega Industries, reported their stock plummeting, market value bleeding millions by the minute. The green charts turned red, like a wild horse charging toward a cliff. Thaddeus pleaded, "Everly, we need you at the church now, not for the ceremony, but to save everything." His words were a blaring alarm. shattering plans for the big day. Everly grabbed her grease-stained coveralls, each oil streak feeling like the weight of her family's and the company's future. En route to the church, she passed the wedding convoy heading the opposite way. Sleek luxury cars, Dutch imported flowers, photographers lined up at the gate. Everything seemed to breeze as she sped through traffic, weaving past curious onlookers. A swarm of reporters aimed lenses at the grimy mechanic, shouting, "Everly Hart," one comment. She brushed past like a cold bronze statue, her resolute gaze fixed on the cathedral. In a small room beside the sanctuary, Everly found Zephyr Locke beside Tamsin Hart, her eyes red, lips trembling. The tall man, once dashing in his dark suit, now looked lost amid the ashes of ambition. Thaddeus explained. Leaked financial data triggered a chain reaction, banks threatening to pull credit, shareholders panicking. Everything could collapse today. Everly closed her eyes for a second, then opened them with steely resolve. "I'll help, but on my terms." On the cathedral steps, Everly stood in her oil-streaked jacket, face bare of makeup, eyes ablaze. Reporters encircled her, microphones raised like probing arrows. She took a deep breath, her voice ringing with emotion. Innovation doesn't recognize social class. True value lies in capability and commitment to change, not in suits or hollow medals. Her words pierced like arrows, sparking a viral ripple. As she finished, the stock chart flashed green again. Within moments, the crowd erupted in cheers, reporters stunned, capturing the pivotal moment. Tamsin rushed to embrace her, tears streaming. "You saved us all." Zephyr bowed his head, eyes brimming with gratitude. "You're the real hero." The wedding planned for that day was postponed a month to rebuild trust. When it took place, gone were the lavish imported blooms, replaced by simple wild daisies. Symbols of resilience and new beginnings. Everly Hart attended as a friend and savior of honor, no longer the shadow of her greasy past. Her parents, Sterling and Odessa Hart, clasped her hands, their eyes radiant with pride. Hart Garage was no longer just a repair shop, but the R&D heartbeat of MGN Bastions, a beacon of mechanical passion and strategic vision. That night, as the music faded, Everly returned to her garage, enveloped by the familiar scent of oil. But this time, she wasn't alone. Her steel heart had scaled the heights of acclaim, leaving an indelible symphony in its wake. The dawn light filtered through the stained glass windows of Hart Garage, painting the mottled concrete floor in hues of gold and blue, a map of hard-won triumphs. Everly Hart stood on the steps, her grease-stained coveralls now a symbol of victory, each oil streak, each year of toil, a badge honoring her journey. Reporters gathered sparsely at the gate, lenses trained on the mechanic-turned-CEO, an emblem of grit-stained hands and a visionary soul, ready to launch a fateful press conference. The morning breeze rattled the tin roof like festival drums, heralding a moment of harmony between grease and power. Everly drew a deep breath, her lungs expanding with the new sunlight. Stepping to the podium, her gaze sharp as a steel blade, she rested a hand on the microphone, poised to touch her audience's hearts with a declaration. Under the camera lights, oil dust on her jacket glimmered like scattered stars, narrating the story of someone unafraid of grime yet proud to cradle her passion. The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of recorders and the crowd's eager breaths. Everly's voice rang out, warm yet incisive, like a flame roaring in a forge. "Today I stand here not as a mechanic or CEO, but as someone affirming a truth. Innovation doesn't recognize social class." Her words shattered walls of prejudice, the space erupting in applause and the rapid click of cameras. Each utterance of innovation tolled like a bell, ushering in an era where worth is measured by aspiration, not attire. Thaddeus Locke approached, his face a mix of faith and awe. He shook Everly's hand amid the reporters' swarm, the gesture a bridge between the cold steel empire and the gritty garage. "Thank you, Everly. You've restored our trust and financial momentum," he said, his voice deep with rare emotion. Zephyr Locke's eyes shone with gratitude as he stepped forward, gripping his future sister-in-law's shoulder. "You saved my reputation and my heart." A loudspeaker announced the wedding would be rescheduled for next month. Simple, yet heartfelt. Instead of imported roses, wild yellow daisies would line the aisle, a testament to a humble yet meaningful new beginning. The red carpet stage gave way to a natural setting, warm sun, still breeze, and complete family bonds. Tamsin Hart emerged, her white wedding gown now elegantly understated, clutching a bouquet of daisies. She enveloped Everly in a tight embrace, her choked sobs brimming with gratitude. "Thank you for holding our family's faith together." Sterling and Odessa Hart's eyes glistened as their daughters leaned into each other, their trials forging an unbreakable bond. The wedding unfolded under an ancient tree, nature's canvas painted with green hope. Laughter echoed through the garden, children darted around simple banquet tables, and guests shared sweet mulled wine, a reminder that true joy lies in connection, not opulence. Everly stood at the garden's edge, raising a glass, gazing at the scene she'd helped shape, a wedding born from a mechanical odyssey into a tale of family and authentic values. As dusk fell and lanterns flickered, Everly returned to the garage, her steps steady on the stained concrete. At the corner, a plaque read, "Gonzalez Garage, R&D Division of MGN Bastions." The bold new name was a manifesto of her journey from grimy hands to the pinnacle of innovation. Everly traced her finger over R&D, smiling in the dim golden light, knowing the story wasn't over. A new chapter had begun, fueled by relentless ambition and an unconquerable steel heart. Thank you for listening to the extraordinary journey of Everly Hart, the mechanic turned CEO. From Hart Garage to the heights of Vega Industries. Thank you for the support of Tamsin Hart, Zephyr Locke, Thaddeus Locke, and Blaze Mercer. See you again on the Millionaire and Hart Stories channel.